Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I must admit, when I was asked to share a few thoughts about this TEDx theme, I was quite intrigued by the word quintessence. And so I thought we'd explore this word quintessence by first acknowledging that it has many shades of meaning. But one of the shades of meaning is it is the purest and most perfect example of something, right? So, keeping this in mind, let's ask the question, what is the purest and most perfect example of you, of me, of each one of us? In other words, the question we could ask ourselves is, who are you really? Right? So, when you ask someone this question, very often they say their name, I am Rohan, or they identify with their profession. I am an educator, I'm an author, I'm a public speaker. Or they identify with their nationality, I am Indian, or with their religion. But all these things can be changed. You can change your name, your religion, your nationality, and so on. So those can't be your true identity, right? So the question is something that we could explore over the next few minutes. Alan Watts was a very famous British philosopher, and his response to this question, who are you really, was to say, deep, deep down, far, far in, you are the very essence of existence itself. Now, when we hear this, I'm sure it sounds mysterious, enigmatic, confusing. Some of us may want to dismiss this. So let's do this. Let's take a scientific and a spiritual perspective to try and understand what Alan Watts is saying. Now, science uses experimental investigation. Spirituality uses mystical insight. Science uses tools to explore the outer world. Spirituality uses the mind to explore the inner world. So let's look at what science has to say about this question, who are you or who am I, right? So there are, of course, many sciences. We will focus only on cosmology and quantum physics. Now, I'm sure many of you have seen this sight in the night sky, especially if you go off into the desert. That obviously is an image of our Milky Way galaxy. And even on the most perfect night, you can see only about 3,000 to 5,000 stars with your naked eye. If you could zoom out and look at the Milky Way galaxy from way above, you'll realize the Milky Way galaxy is massive. It's 100,000 light years across. But every star that you can see with your naked eye here on Earth would fall within that yellow circle over there. So how many stars across our Milky Way galaxy? There are over 300 billion stars in our galaxy alone. So then you're starting to wonder, okay, how many galaxies in the universe? So this is an incredible image called the cosmic treasure chest. It was taken very recently by the Vera C. Rubin Observatory. And this is an image of 10 million galaxies from a tiny part of the night sky, just a tiny part. And each of these points of light you see is not a star. It's a galaxy with hundreds of billions of stars. So the question is, how many galaxies in the whole universe? If there's 10 million just in this small image, well, the fact is there are 2 trillion galaxies in the whole observable universe. And each of these galaxies has hundreds of billions of stars. So to get a sense of how many stars are out there, look at it this way. There are more stars in the observable universe than there are grains of sand in all the deserts and beaches of our planet. And in this metaphor, Earth, or rather our sun, is just 1 grain of sand. So the universe is vast. And we could ask the question, what are we made of if we live in this universe? And Stephen Hawking, one of the most brilliant minds on the planet, has something quite despairing to say. He says, we are nothing but chemical scum on the surface of an ordinary planet revolving around an ordinary sun in an ordinary part of an ordinary galaxy. Right? You hear that and you feel a bit depressed. But David Deutsch is another brilliant mind. He's a quantum computing physicist at Oxford. He disagrees with Stephen Hawking. And he gives us a thought experiment to explain why. He says, imagine you take the entire universe and you divide it into cubes. Each cube is the size of our solar system. So each cube is about 20 billion kilometers across, right? So just do that experiment, thought experiment in your mind. And then he asks us to imagine what a typical cube would look like. In other words, what is an average place in the universe? And most people would think, oh, an average place in the universe must be blazing with stars and supernovas and comets and planets and galaxies. But that's not the case. A typical cube or an average place in the universe is cold, dark, and empty. How cold? Close to absolute zero. How dark? So dark that you could spend your entire life there and not see a single star. And how empty? Emptier than the best vacuums we can create here on Earth. And so in this cold, dark, and empty universe, Earth exists. Something truly special is going on here on Earth because life flourishes on this planet. In this cold, dark, and empty universe, over 100 million species of life forms have evolved and emerged on this planet. And so, as a rebuttal to Stephen Hawking, we are not chemical scum. We exist, and most importantly, we are alive. So from a scientific perspective, one way to answer this question, who are we, is to say we are a form of life in a cold, dark, and empty universe. And we can go further. 90% of the stuff in the universe is dark matter and dark energy. We don't know what it is. We know it exists, but we have no idea what it is. So when we ask this question, what are we made of? We're made of only that 10% of the universe. And the most amazing fact that we learn from science about the universe is, as Neil deGrasse Tyson says, we are in the universe and the universe is in us. What that means is the most abundant elements in the universe are hydrogen, helium, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. The most abundant elements in our body are exactly the same. There is a one-to-one correlation between what the universe is made of and what we are made of. And so we are literally stardust. We are made of stuff that was created in the insides of stars, and when those stars went supernova, the carbon atoms in your right hand may have come from a different star than the carbon atoms in your left hand. And so this is what we learn from science, that we are stardust. This is not poetry, it's not metaphor, it's literal scientific fact. And so, okay, let's look at these carbon atoms. What if we zoomed in? What would we discover? Who are we really deep, deep down? And we find we're made of elementary particles, electrons, photons, etc. Why are they elementary? Because if you break an electron, if you split an electron, you don't get anything new. You just get more electrons. If you split a photon, you just get more photons, right? So what are these elementary particles made of? They are literally, what scientists tell us, they are excitations in a quantum field, excitations of energy in a quantum field. So what is a quantum field? This is a field of information that is spread out everywhere in the universe, right? So look at these words, information, energy. These are not things that you can touch. They're not physical in any real sense, right? They are an abstraction. And if you could zoom down to the deepest level, you discover, or we discover as scientists, that there is something called the quantum foam. This is at the tiniest scales, there's quantum fluctuations in space-time. And virtual matter and antimatter particles pop in and out of existence, out of nothing. So what we learn from science is that at the very, very, very fundamental level of us and reality, there is not no thing, or rather not nothing, but no thing that you can touch. That's at the fundamental level, and that's what we learn from science. We've reached the limits of what science can teach us. Let's jump to spirituality. What does Eastern spirituality have to say about who we are? Most people would identify with their mind or their body, right? So the fact is, from a spiritual perspective, you are not just your body, because your body changes. You were an infant, then a toddler, then a child, now a teenager, and then you grow up to be adults and old people, right? So you are that which is aware of your body. Your body changes, but that awareness remains. Some people say they are the mind, but you are not the mind. Your mind consists of all these things: feelings, emotions, desires, ego sense, memories. All these things change. What doesn't change is that awareness that is aware of your mind. You are that which is aware of your mind. And so, as you grow older, your mind will change, your body will change. You can look at your mind and your body as objects. Everything out here is an object, including your mind and your body. You are that consciousness that is aware of your mind, your body, and every other thing. It's pure awareness with no qualities. So, what we learn from science is that at a fundamental level, we're made of no thing, and from spirituality, we're made of no object. And so that leaves us with the question, who are we then? That is a question I would encourage all of us to spend our entire lives exploring the answer to. The ancient Greeks had a very famous saying that they had in all their temples and everywhere else: know thyself. Because this is perhaps one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves as living forms of life on this beautiful planet. And so we need to take a multidisciplinary approach to figuring out who we are. We need reason and emotion. We need technology and philosophy. And above all, we need science and spirituality. So to conclude, in a world where technology is having such a huge impact on our lives, in a world where a new form of intelligence is emerging, artificial intelligence, the question isn't just who are we? The question also is, what will we do now that we know we exist at all? Perhaps that is one of the most important questions for each and every one of us. I thank you for listening. I hope I gave you some food for thought. And now I'm super looking forward to all the wonderful TEDx speakers. I'm sure they've spent many weeks and months preparing, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.